Hello everyone, my name is Eunhee Ka. I'm an agent from iMPRIMA Korea agency, one of the biggest literary agencies in Korea. Today, I will be talking to you about everything you need to know when acquiring copyright licenses of Korean books. First, I will show you some recent trends in the Korean publishing market, along with some trends of the Korean books that are exported from Korea to other countries. We will also look at the common procedures of signing a contract for the publication rights, what steps are needed, what the most common contract terms are. And I will also give you some tips that can help you when communicating and working with the Korean publishers. Without further ado, I will jump right into the recent Korean trends in the publishing market. You can always check out the most popular books in Korea by looking at the bestseller list of the biggest online bookstores, which are Kyobo and Yes24. You can also contact agencies and tell them what types of books you're interested in so that they can recommend the titles that are suitable for you. Currently, the most popular genre in Korea is fiction. On both of the websites that I just mentioned, we can see that a novel called Dollar Good Dream Department Store is on top of the list. According to an article from 조선일보, which was released on 3rd of September, the sequel of this title was ranked number 1 for 5 consecutive weeks. And the article also mentions that 7 books out of top 10 books were fiction, which proves that fiction is definitely the most popular genre in Korea these days. Dollar Good Department Store is a fantasy novel and also is a young adult fiction, but the novel is actually loved by a lot of adults. Due to COVID-19, lots of people are dealing with COVID blues, meaning anxiety, depression, anguish arising in the wake of COVID-19. Therefore, books that can help the readers heal themselves are in trend, whether fiction or non-fiction. Another huge trend in the Korean publishing market is books in investment. Investment was the most popular genre last year due to investment fever in Korea, as we're living in the age of artificial intelligence and the ongoing pandemic. Therefore, we can see that books that talk about investment techniques and amassing wealth are very popular nowadays. In addition, this trend of investing book is spreading to the children books as well. More and more parents are wishing to teach their children a sense of economy and different sense of money. 세금내는 아이들, translated Children Who Pay Taxes, is a book that gives education on economy for children. This book fulfills the need of the parents who feel that the public education does not cover enough the knowledge of money. This book is in storytelling format, which makes it interesting enough for the children, and it helps the children to get familiar with terms like taxes, investment, insurance, and so forth. As for children books, comic books that feature popular characters are also spotted on the bestseller list. Here are some of the examples. 흔한 남매 series are made by 흔한 남매, who are famous YouTube creators in Korea. Their YouTube channel, 흔한 남매, which in English is called Sibling War, is immensely popular among children these days. Due to the popularity of the YouTube channel, the books, which include storybook, comic books, game books, are loved by many children. This trend also proves that YouTube channels have great influence in the publishing market. The books that are written by the popular YouTube creators tend to receive a lot of attention from the readers, including the fans of those YouTube creators. At the same time, YouTube also plays an important role in promoting the published books as well. Along the same lines, celebrity marketing through SNS also has a great impact on the publishing market. especially for children's books and non-fictions. Therefore, celebrities who have a lot of followers on SNS are oftentimes asked to write their own books and have published their own books. Most of them are essays, and in the books, the celebrities talk about their lives, which a lot of fans would be interested in. For example, Let Them Be is written by a famous Korean singer called Eunhee Ka. Popular celebrities like IU have recommended this title, which caused great marketing effect. The export of Korean publishing works began in the early and mid-2000s thanks to the Korean wave centered in China and South Asia. In the case of iMPRIMA Korea Agency, after exporting the original novel of a drama called 대장금 to Taiwan, we began to export lots of original novels of Korean dramas. In the early 2010s, in addition to fiction, various genres such as children's books, especially series, and non-fictions like language learning, essays, parenting became popular in Asia, especially in China. Since then, China has been the biggest market for exported Korean books. However, due to some political issues, exports to China have decreased and become unstable since 2014. Regarding exports to countries outside of Asia, firstly, the well-known authors of Korean literature, including Shin Kyung-suk, the author of Please Look After Mom, and Han Gang, the winner of Man Booker Prize and the author of The Vegetarian, began to enter the American and English market in the late 2000s. At that time, because the Korean wave was only within Asia, therefore Korean literature was considered more as a third world literature outside of Asia. Until now, the Korean literature does dominate the export of the Korean books outside of Asia. However, it is surely gaining more recognition. Recently, a novel called The Disaster Tourist by Eun, which is a title exclusively handled by us iMPRIMA Korea Agency and Barbara J's Tour Agency, won the International Booker Prize. Thus, the Korean literature is drawing more attention from the global level again. On top of that, starting from last year, K-pop has become widely popular not just in Asia but throughout the whole world, which is opening up new possibilities and opportunities. In some countries, the popularity of K-pop and K-dramas leads to their interest in original novels of the K-dramas, drama script books, and also books that are related to idols like BTS, including books that are about BTS and even the books that are recommended by BTS. Also, the most famous Korean author of picture books, Baek-hina, won the Astrid Lindgren Memorial Award in 2020. Some of her famous works include The Cloud Bread, The Bath Fairy, Strange Mother, which you can still see on the bestseller list in Korea. And lots of her works have been published in many different languages, including English, Chinese, Japanese, German, and so forth. And Lee Soo-ji, another famous Korean writer of picture books, became the first Korean author to be nominated for Hans Christian Award this year. With internationally recognized authors like these two, Korean picture books are surely getting more attention from many countries. Last but not least, the Korean young adult fiction are also becoming a big trend in exporting market. Starting with one of the most popular young adult fiction in Korea, Almond by Son Won-pyong, which was published in 14 different countries and also won the first place in the category of the translated novels in Japan. young adult fiction became not only popular in Korea, but also started receiving attention from many other countries. Eunhee Ka, another writer that iMPRIMA Korea agency and Barbara J. Zitwer agency exclusively handle some of her remarkable works, was nominated for the Hans Christian Andersen Award in 2020. Her works include You Are the Sky, Can I Go There, and many of them have already received offers from various countries and are waiting to meet more readers in the future. Korean young adult fiction seems to have a lot of potential, and we are very looking forward to it. So, what do you do when you found a Korean book that interested you? First, you need to make sure that the copyright of the desired language and region is available. Therefore, inquiry of the copyright should be the first step. You might contact the Korean publishers directly, or you may also choose an agency. As for the exported Korean books, in many cases there is no specific agency that exclusively handles the foreign rights. Therefore, a number of publishers inquire and review the same titles at the same time, which often leads to competition of offers. If it's confirmed that the copyright is available, next step would be reviewing the title. Unfortunately, there is rarely an English translation unless it's a picture book or famous literature. And as for literature, there rarely is a full English translation. Most of the time, there are only sample translations. But most of the Korean publishers do provide the PDF file of the full original book, or at least half of the book. And physical copies are provided if requested. After reviewing the title, if you're willing to publish it, an offer shall be sent to the proprietor. An offer usually includes language, region, format, advance, royalty rate, estimated first print run, estimated retail price, data fee. For data fee, if there's any data to be used, for example, an illustrations of the cover or photographs from the main text, and etc. Publication date, contract period, others. For others, if there's anything that you would like to change about the book, for instance, size, or if you need anything from the proprietor, for instance, a photo of the author. A deal could be made right away. However, if other publishers are reviewing the same title or other agencies are in the process of recommending the title, an offer deadline shall be set and notified by the proprietor. It is common for the Korean publishers to give about a month of time for reviewing after sending the files, but it may require a longer time depending on which country. If a title has received an offer from a publisher, normally a week or two will be given to the reviewing publishers and agencies. After the offer deadline, if the offers that the Korean publishers received have very similar conditions and it's hard for them to decide, then a second deadline might be set. And some Korean publishers do give the publisher that made the first offer an opportunity to make the best offer after the offer deadline, but others don't. Therefore, you would need to ask the proprietor whether they give the opportunity or not. If your offer has been accepted, a contract shall be written and signed. Regarding the terms of contracts of exported Korean books, I would first like to tell you that they're very different from country to country, but most contracts do specify the following: language, region, format. A lot of the contracts these days include ebook and audiobook. However, it is notable that that is not the case for most of the picture books and non-fictions with a lot of pictures in. If you would like to sign ebook or audiobook, as there are many different formats, it is necessary to inform the proprietor details about how they're going to be sold. For example, is it subscription-based or can it be accounted by copies? Is the audiobook CD or downloadable on electronic devices? Additionally, sometimes the royalties of ebook and audiobook are paid separately from the paperback royalties, but sometimes they are deducted from the paperback advance when the amount is too small. So if you have a specific way that you would like to account the royalties of ebook and audiobook, it would be best to inform the proprietor in advance. Contract period, which is usually 5 years. However, it also depends. As for some titles, termination periods are not specified at all in the contract, but in those cases, the causes that can lead to termination are clearly expressed. Method of distribution, whether it's online or offline or both. Next, we have advance in royalty rate. This might be what a lot of people are curious about the most. But as the situations are different from country to country, and the most Korean publishers do take count of the fact that the amount could be paid could be very different from each country. But for your reference, I'm showing you a chart from a research published by Publication Industry Promotion Agency of Korea, which is on analysis of the status of books that are exported outside of Korea, based on an online survey about the books that were exported from 2018 to 2019. The result shows that 18.2%, which is the highest on the chart, of the contracts included $2,000 to $3,000 of advance. However, as I just mentioned, the advance does vary by country and also just by title. Therefore, it would be safe to just start by suggesting the amount that is considered as the basic requirement in your own country. Next, we have estimated first print run, retail price, withholding tax rate, agency commission, if there is any agency, and usually it is 10% of the advance and the royalty. In royalty report, the publisher shall provide royalty report most of the time annually. Korean publishers consider royalty report as the most important obligation from the agreement. Usually it is required to submit it within 3 months after December 1st from the year of publication. Some publishers do terminate the agreement if the royalty report is not submitted after the proprietor has requested multiple times. So please keep in mind. Next, we have payment, which includes payment method, date, bank details. If there is an agency, normally the publisher remits to the agency, and the agency would deduct their agency commission before remitting to the proprietor. In some cases, the proprietors receive the money directly, and the agency would receive their commission from the proprietor. So we have copyright line, data fee, if there is any data fee. Sometimes the Korean publishers would set the data fee even before receiving an offer. If not, it shall be suggested by the publisher depending on the number of pictures, graphs, and charts that the book has and how much of them you would like to use. Publication date. Meeting the deadline of the publication is another important obligation considered by most of the Korean publishers. The publication day should normally be 18 or 24 months from the agreement date. And if there will be any change on the schedule which will cause delay, the publisher must inform the proprietor in advance. Working copies are normally 3. And gratis copies, usually 6 to 10 gratis copies are granted to the proprietor. And after the book is published, the publisher must send the gratis copies as soon as possible, as mostly the proprietors normally wish to know whether their books were published safely, and they're also obliged to send the gratis copies to the authors. Next, we have contract termination. In most cases, contracts terminate automatically when the contract periods end. However, the contracts normally do specify the causes that can lead to the earlier termination before the contract even meets the end of the contract period. For example, if publisher fails to publish its edition within the specified period, or if publisher defaults in accounting or making payments, or if publisher violates any of the terms of the contract and still fails to rectify such violation within 1 month of having received written notice, and so forth. From these, we can know that when there's any modification needed or inevitable delays, if you inform the proprietors in advance, best with written notice, most of them would understand. However, if there was no explanation at all from the publisher, it might lead to an earlier termination of the contract. Also, it is notable that although mostly it's not written on the contract, lots of Korean publishers wish to be able to receive a termination letter that acknowledges the fact that the contract is over, and therefore the copyright of such language is available again. So we have just looked over the most common terms of the contracts. Next, after a contract is written, usually the proprietors review the draft contract first. And after both sides finish reviewing the contracts will be signed. Although some publishers only sign on the paperback contract, electronic signatures like Adobe Sign and DocuSign is becoming more common these days. After the signature, payment of the advance and data fee should be arranged. And when the remittance is complete, the proprietor will send the manuscript files and the working copies to the proprietor. And one thing that the publisher shall not forget to do before start working on publishing the book is sending the withholding tax certificate. In order to pay withholding tax, some countries require a certificate like this from proprietors. And as in some past cases, documents like this were not prepared in time, which led to greater tax being charged. Therefore, it would be great if you tell the proprietors in advance if you need any document regarding withholding tax. And you may start working on publishing the book. Lastly, I would like to mention that a lot of publishers wish to be able to hear from the foreign publishers as soon as possible during the whole process, from reviewing to the book publishing contract. And as communication has a huge impact on trust between the proprietor and the publisher, the Korean publishers wish to be able to get some feedback regarding their books. If the Korean publishers are unable to contact you due to circumstances such as change of the person in charge, a smoother communication would be possible through notices in advance or by simply leaving a message. So this is the end of my presentation. I hope this video was helpful for you. And if you have any questions, please ask Publication Industry Promotion Agency of Korea. Or if you have any Korean titles that you're interested in, you are welcome to contact iMPRIMA Korea Agency as well. Thank you.